It's now my pleasure to introduce Peter Boumgarden, Professor of Practice, Strategy, and Organizations at the Olin School of Business. He is here to speak about experiential impact. Please join me in welcoming Professor Boumgarden.
Great. If I knew that I was going to have to follow a WashU tie and a reference to Star Trek, I might have worked a little bit harder in advance of this time together. So one of the things that's especially I would say especially honoring about being in this particular moment is seeing all our great colleagues and the work they're doing. So kudos to you all for all the work that you're doing across the community. About a year ago, I'll get to that. About a year ago, last July, my wife Kelly and I packed up our bags in Michigan, headed through Chicago and south down I-55 to come back to St. Louis. I also, like a number of people here, am a Washington University grad. And I was excited about being back in St. Louis. Runs in Forest Park, which I did this morning, concerts at the Botanical Gardens, all the rest. One of the things that I actually remember most vividly about the time of coming onto campus right off the highway was seeing actually right outside this building a sign right off of Forest Park Parkway. It read, WashU, proud to be in St. Louis. WashU, proud to be in St. Louis. An international institution and a local identity. Maybe in some ways, this is why we came back. There's a lot of reasons to be proud in St. Louis, proud of St. Louis, but unfortunately, a lot of them look backwards in time. We tend to talk about the World's Fair, we talk about the 1904 Olympics, we tend to tell stories that focus on a city that has potentially lost momentum. Take this image. St. Louis's Union Station. At one point, this was the busiest train station in the world. These numbers still astound me. 100,000 people arrived or departed every single day on 22 lines that crisscrossed this country. But this is just as much a story about cities as it is about trains. For after all, in 1978, 0 trains came in and out of this particular building. And if you consider the city at the exact same time, during this same period, it was a city that also started to seem to lose momentum. In 1950, the population was 850,000 people. But due to a number of different factors, we lost a lot of people, we lost several significant businesses, we fractured into municipalities, and as a result, today, we sit at just over 300,000 people in this city alone. People and companies left for a number of different reasons, some very understandable, some less so. Lack of opportunity, changing incentives, perhaps even racial prejudices, actually I would say especially even racial prejudices, and perhaps even a lack of pride. So what does it look like to be proud of St. Louis today? What does it look like to step into this map, to realize the realities, and yet continue forward? I think in some ways, it's not only about finding particular momentum that exists now, but it's about finding ways to corral it into existence. There's a lot of stories that we tell about how cities find momentum. One of them is the fact that we just need to find ways to create opportunities for our existing businesses to grow and to thrive. Perhaps what if we just essentially recruited some of our tech giants to this particular region? What if we made the next Silicon Valley? What if we had the right nonprofits? What if? Such a passive framing in a lot of ways. Let's forget about cities for just a moment, and let's talk about universities. After all, some say we have our own sort of momentum problem at this point. We talk about the rising costs of education and rightly question whether or not we've created appropriate access. They critique disciplines like my own in business for encouraging our students to move fast and break things. They question the humanities for their relevance. In many ways, they wonder, again, rightfully so, whether or not we have created a city on a hill without much concern for those outside their wall. But as I drove into St. Louis on that incredibly hot and humid day in July, which apparently is still the case here in October, it's a good thing to remember when I was making that decision to move from Michigan. One of the things that I actually started to wonder is whether or not the answer to these problems, the answer to these questions, is in fact found in that banner, that red and green bold-fonted banner, WashU, proud to be in St. Louis. After all, the dual challenges that we face around lost momentum in the city of St. Louis and concern for the same in regards to higher education are real. But perhaps that's not the only answer. In fact, many of my colleagues are speaking the exact same story. We have to find ways to not only capture or find existing momentum, but to take the task of leadership and to corral it into existence. So, here's what I mean. I believe that some of the future of higher education is finding ways to unite our students, pull them together alongside our faculty into moments and opportunities for experiential impact. I believe that to some degree, coming alongside the work of the city, coming alongside the work of organizations within our city, not only shapes our students in impactful ways, it shapes our cities. For example, what if I told you that, to some degree, having our students come alongside and lead semester-long projects inside and alongside our regional economic giants, helping them make decisions informed by the rigors of data science and also value-driven reflection, might be a way to start to change the relevance of higher education. What if the best way to combine the relevance question of higher education and civic impact is not instead actually moving some of our students into governance or perhaps consultative roles with some of our region's nonprofits and moving to the startup system, because I just happened to flip those two in my own mind? Perhaps it's a way as well of starting to think about taking them alongside some of our startups in this region. You heard some of this work being done here. Perhaps it's helping our university leaders, our scientists and our technologists learn how to transfer their impact to market. And perhaps, just maybe, in the midst of this work, they too might stumble upon the way that WashU might shape a city on the banks of the Mississippi, much like Stanford shaped the valley. And what if, in taking our students around the globe, they actually learn to transcend some of these cultural differences that exist just as significantly inside a divided city as they do across country lines? So here's the good news. This isn't some grand vision. This is the kind of work that's happening right now in this very city. For example, at the Center for Experiential Learning, my center here on campus, we run a series of programs across all of these particular areas. In fact, we have 8 distinct programs that are all student-led and faculty-guided. We worked this last year on 5 continents and 9 countries. We generated 596 student opportunities and served 488 unique students. We served 144 unique clients on 147 projects. And all total, thanks to my incredible staff for compiling this, we essentially generated 62,635 hours of experiential impact. Let's go forward a little bit to today. This year alone, we are going to have an opportunity to have 650 opportunities for our students. Let's look at the map here for a second. In fact, right now, we have a team of students working with a professor at the School of Medicine alongside several of our regional economic giants in healthcare to try to find ways to knit together this somewhat fragmented and fractured ecosystem of people that touch on areas of health. We have another team of students in our practicum program working with leaders of university city public schools, my own school district, helping them make decisions in regards to predictive modeling around enrollment. So that they're not just making decisions like this, but in fact being informed by the same kind of rigors of data science that exists across this campus. We have students right now working with startups out of Cortex and T-Rex. In fact, one of them funded by one of the top VCs in the Valley, helping them think about how to navigate this landscape. We have, at this point, 29 of our MBAs serving in voting board member governance roles with some of our region's most impactful nonprofits in our Board Fellows program, and our tailored community consulting program actually allows some of our other students to come alongside, serve, and advise them in their work as well. And finally, in our small business initiative, we have some of our undergrads working alongside minority-owned business owners from everywhere from Ferguson all the way down to Cherokee Street, managing the day-to-day realities of business in economically disadvantaged zones. Maybe this is what it means to turn our pride into something else, something a little bit more active. It's not pride as an emotion, it's pride as movement, pride as perhaps even momentum. Indeed, if we as a university don't hear these questions around relevance for our businesses and don't actually respond to the questions around momentum or lost momentum in St. Louis, then I think the world is right to question our relevance. But here's the good news. The decision makers that can start to shape that momentum, whether they're academic leaders or trustees, friends of this university, significant leaders in this community, you sit inside this very room. You're listening to this very talk right now. In fact, some of you might know right now some of these opportunities for experiential impact in your spheres. And if you do, don't wait. Give me a call. Buy me a cup of coffee. I'll charge it to WashU, perhaps. I'd love to talk. The dreamers of the future sit inside this university right now, hopefully in class, in places from business to biology, engineering to English literature. But in fact, the campus that we think of, the classroom, is in fact wider than just these four walls because they're tinkering in projects in the city as we speak. The challenges around higher education and the space for growth, I believe, again, exist in this space for experiential impact. Our challenge now is to find ways to move this more passive pride, this more backward-looking pride, into spaces for forward-looking movement. Pride isn't an emotion. Pride is a decision. Pride is action. Pride is found in creating these opportunities for Washington University to impact the city and beyond. Thank you.